Hello everyone and welcome in the first ever episode in English of the educational series about Sylius, the e-commerce framework coming from Poland. Relatively unknown, so we have to compare it to something big, like Magento and Shopify, the giants of the industry. If you're interested what is Sylius and how it compares to these big solutions, stay with me for the next several minutes and learn everything about it. Okay, we will compare these three solutions into 7 different factors. First of all, the positioning, so for whom is the solution? Then the cost. The third, the scale, so how big is the business behind the technology? The fourth will be the architecture, so the technological angle. The fifth will be the ecosystem, so how many users it has. And the sixth will be the pain points, so all the opinions in the internet that you can find about the solution. And finally, the seventh, my recommendations. So what I personally believe and what I think you should think and when you should use it. Important note, we are speaking about the mid-market, so the problems of the major e-commerce industry. And for that you need to remember we're going to focus mainly on Shopify Plus. Let's start from the first, so the positioning. For whom is the specific solution? Shopify is the biggest player on the market with the biggest ecosystem naturally, so it is the most obvious way to start your e-commerce business today. You can just click and you have the store in the next moment in one day. It also translates to the mid-market. So the Shopify Plus is usually used by the users of Shopify coming from the first basic plan up to the next, and the fourth, so the biggest currently Shopify Plus plan. So if you want to stay in the same ecosystem from the beginning, if you want to use all the add-ons and everything that is shipped by this big player, you should probably choose Shopify. Same goes for the design needs and same goes for the general non-tech approach. So if you don't have a CTO or a dev team inside your company, if you don't want to collaborate with a software house and outsource the development somewhere else, and you want to have the full control over the technology, you should probably use Shopify Plus. And also if you have relatively common needs, selling, let's say, simple products in the simple checkout flow, you don't really modify it, you don't really add separate services, you just add product to the cart and you sell it, then probably Shopify is the best what you can choose. Magento, on the other hand, is kind of the same as Shopify, but in the open source industry. So in the industry of the code that you can use for free, and you can probably customize it basically to whatever challenge you need. For years, it's been the biggest player on the market. From 2008, it has completely dominated the open source e-commerce sphere, and it is also the point of reference for every other open source solution like Sylius. Speaking about Magento, exactly like Shopify, because it's the point of reference and it's the biggest in terms of ecosystem, it has also the biggest number of features out of the box. So if you need a very mature solution having everything in place, but you don't want to pay a subscription fee as Shopify and you want to have some customizations developed by your software house or your internal developers, you should probably consider Magento. At least it was the reality for the last 17 years. Of course, you can also go to the Adobe Commerce Cloud, so the big suite of solutions, exactly like Microsoft with Azure, Teams, and everything that is shipped with one big digital experience platform. Same goes for Adobe. It bought Magento like a few years ago in 2019, and ever since we've been seeing the upscaling of the merchants using Magento, in terms of revenue, in terms of operations, and the whole corporate approach. So we have to differentiate the Magento open source, which is for free, and Adobe Commerce Cloud, which is using Magento while also shipping many more features and is worth good money. Sylius, on the other hand, is perfect if you want to build a fully tailored store. So the more customizations you need, the better for Sylius. The more unique is your business model, the better for Sylius. The more you mess with the standard checkout flow, the better for Sylius. There are no limits. That's why it's called e-commerce framework, not a platform. It's not closed like a boxed solutions like Shopify. It's not a big suite like Magento and Adobe. It is a flexible framework. So the set of bundles, set of code libraries, let's call it like this for non-tech people, that allows you to build basically everything you need to build. It makes perfect sense, especially in the B2B industry where you heavily customize all the processes. There's nothing normal in calculating 100 million of pricing variants, and this happens sometimes in B2B. So for that use, Sylius is perfect. The second point on our list is the cost, so the total cost of ownership of each of these solutions. First of all, Shopify Plus. It's very clear, you can find it on the website. The pricing of this solution is $2,500 per month, or $2,300 if you go for the 3 years license upfront. In this license, you have all the features you can imagine. Also, you have the hosting, but you don't have any customizations. If you want to build something custom with Shopify Plus, as with every Shopify plan, you need to find an agency that will build a specific add-on for you. Or you need to buy an add-on from the big marketplace of plugins and add-ons on the Shopify marketplace. Same goes for a theme. Basically, you buy everything that you need to make your store feel unique. So the total cost of ownership in the yearly overview could be like $30,000 for a license itself, and then another $20,000 for add-ons and everything else. And also, let's not forget about the transactional fees that you're paying, like 2% for every transaction in Shopify, and probably some fee for the agency building something custom for you with these microservices that you have to glue to Shopify. It might grow and grow. So, but $50,000 for the mid-market for Shopify Plus is an absolute minimum. And I know customers that are paying much, much more, like $300,000 just for the license and all the add-ons and some customization. Magento. The average Adobe Commerce Cloud license is around €100,000 per year. If you add to this all the customizations and the development and the maintenance that is normal for this solution, so you cannot really cope without an agency, unlike Shopify, you have to add probably double this amount, so $200,000 or even $300,000. The usual budget for Magento is around $300,000, I'd say, for a mid-market per year. It includes the license and the agency work. If you go for the Magento open source approach, you just have to subtract the license cost. But then you have to remember about the hosting, because you yourself or your software house has to find a specific hosting for your case, with all the necessary infrastructure setup. Also, there are paid plugins in the Magento ecosystem, exactly like add-ons in Shopify, but there are plenty plugins that you can use for free because of the open source approach of making the software. And finally, Sylius can be implemented totally for free, exactly like Magento, in terms of not paying for the license, or you can go for the set of premium modules called Sylius Plus, and you can choose which model you want to buy. You don't have to buy the big suite. So in contrary to Adobe, where you have to buy the whole suite of the features that most of them you will never probably use, you only select the models that you actually need. And the price for module starts from like €600 per month, but the whole suite of all Sylius Plus models could cost you even €50,000 or more per year. Depends on what you need. You can select a B2B suite, you can select a marketplace suite, you can buy just one model, as I said. So the pricing very much differs from your approach. From our private experience, a development of a Sylius store in the mid-market or the migration of such a store from Magento or Shopify usually takes from 6 to 12 months and costs from €200,000 to €400,000. This is the development, but the maintenance once you are live with Sylius is as cheap as one developer salary and maybe something for the hosting, so maybe around €10,000 per month. So this Sylius is the cheapest of all solutions that I'm mentioning here in terms of the license itself, in terms of the resources that you have to allocate, the developers that you have to hire, and also the hosting is probably the cheapest because the solution is much lighter than Magento. Now, let's go to the third, so the scale. The total GMV, so the gross merchandise volume, so the all money flowing through the solution is absolutely the highest with Shopify. They have reported almost $300 billion flowing through Shopify in 2024. In comparison, Sylius is reporting around $2 billion. So it's just 1% of Shopify's GMV. That's why we're speaking about Sylius, because it's a niche solution and it needs to grow to be somewhere at least a bit closer to the Shopify. Finally, Magento is reporting around $100 to $150 billion that has flown through the system in 2024. So it's like 1/3 or a half of what Shopify is doing. So both of them are giants significantly bigger in terms of GMV than Sylius is. However, money is not everything. There are also other stats like the total number of stores. Shopify is reporting 5 million of stores using the solution. Magento is having like 150,000 instances in terms of Magento open source installations and around 9,000 Adobe Commerce Cloud users with Magento as the e-commerce part of the suite. Sylius, however, according to BuildWith, so the most popular internet crawler checking what technologies are being used by specific websites, is having 10,000 sites using the solution. So it's again much smaller than other platforms. An important note is that among these 5 million of Shopify stores, you have around 14,000 Shopify Plus stores. So 5,000 more enterprises are buying the premium solution than with Adobe, which also underlines the successful marketing and scaling of Shopify all over the world. They are literally opening offices in every country as we speak. It's basically the Google of e-commerce. The fourth factor is technology. For many years, Sylius has been challenging Magento in terms of having better developer experience. We are lucky enough to be contributing a lot to the Sylius ecosystem for many years, and I know by heart that the code out there and the standards that are put into these solutions are outstanding. They are better than everything else on the market in terms of developer experience. Developers love to code Sylius, developers love to extend Sylius, and basically if you ask them, they would always point Sylius, of course, if they know PHP and Symfony, so the underlying language and the framework behind the solution. On the other hand, you got to know there is only around 8,000 users on the Sylius Slack, so it's like the forum for developers mostly. And Magento is having 300,000 users all over the world. At the same time, Sylius, as I said, is based on the Symfony framework, which is having 600,000 developers knowing the solution. And such a developer is basically able to provide any kind of Sylius services in 2 or 3 days after a short training. So one could say there is 2 times more people and specialists able to develop Sylius services than Magento. And Sylius is, as I said, much more pleasant to customize, and there are various reports that say that you can deliver features 3 times faster on Sylius than on Magento. With Shopify, there is basically no developer experience in terms of the backend because you cannot really interfere with the core. You have configurators, or rather people who configure Shopify for you. They do not really code. The situation is different if we think about the front end, because this is with Hydrogen. All the latest releases of Shopify are aimed at the customized experience that you can achieve with this front end solutions. But then you have to use React, and you need to kind of know exactly how to develop certain Shopify libraries. It is not a very standardized, widely used open source solution. So I don't really know how many Shopify developers are out there. You can teach me if you know. For sure, there are at least 5 million of users, which are e-commerce managers like you watching this video. One thing important to say about the technology, Magento is the widely criticized for its quality. Magento 2, so the release that came into reality in 2015, 10 years ago, has broken the ecosystem. Many people have left Magento behind because it was so buggy after this upgrade. Many people have focused on having Adobe certificates and sticking to the new investor and new owner of Magento that came into place a few years later. And finally, the CVEs, so the common vulnerabilities and exposures. Most of them in terms of e-commerce platforms are being reported for Magento. So it's highly insecure system. This is the system that you can easily break, and the way it's written without good test suite makes you really unstable, and you got to have a very good specialist or an agency doing Magento for years to know how to manage it. Because all of these reasons, there are multiple forks and themes that are trying to hide and fix all the problems with Magento code. The most popular recently is Hyvä, so the theme created in Finland. And thanks to this template, there has been a major comeback to the community, and many people stayed with Magento. Many people realized that they can deliver fast and secure stores with this solution. So it is not dying, even though probably some of some other platforms would like to see it dying, but it's still a solution that is widely used and still having new users. The fifth, so the ecosystem. Again, Shopify and Magento are global solutions. So in every country you can probably find a plugin. So the integration with a certain payment provider or a certain shipping provider, or maybe the most popular marketing automation system just in your region. For Sylius, the main focus is on Europe because the solution is coming from Poland, and also the Symfony ecosystem, so the framework that is the underlying technology of Sylius, is coming from France, and all the French developers liking Symfony easily discovered Sylius and chose it to provide specific experience for the customers with our approach. Our in terms of people that have contributed to Sylius all over the years. It was me, it was my partners, and many other people from Poland where we live. In terms of plugins, there are thousands in the Magento marketplace, same as for the apps in the Shopify marketplace. For Sylius, it's around 500 plugins that are available, but I guess around 50 are really stable and ready to use. It kind of shows that Sylius is still the youngest of all solutions and has plenty of work still to catch up. Same goes for the cloud setup, which is native for Shopify and also for Magento and Adobe Commerce Cloud using Platform SH for many years. Sylius also uses Platform SH, so the French hosting provider, but Sylius Cloud is not that ready to use as in the other examples. And that's it. So you have a local ecosystem in Europe and growing for Sylius, around 100 partners here. You have Magento and Shopify as global solutions. One is having thousands of plugins, the other thousands of apps. For Shopify, all the apps are paid. For Magento, some are for free. One is open source and has access to 300,000 developers. The other is mainly focused on marketers and non-tech people, so around 5 million users, but I don't know how many Shopify agencies and developers are out there. But all in all, Shopify has the biggest ecosystem, Magento is smaller, and Sylius is just the smallest of all. And the sixth point, so the problems. For many, many years, I have read all the internet and also talked to so many people, and I know one thing. There is a problem with vendor lock-in. And this is true for every software as a service, like Shopify. So all the good that is shipped with Shopify is also the nightmare. Because if you want to go out of the Shopify ecosystem, it's not so easy. You have to basically develop another store side to Shopify and then migrate one day, preferably overnight when nobody is doing transactions. So the vendor lock-in could be a nightmare because you don't really integrate Shopify easily with any other solution. You have to have a specific app to be built. You have to know its ways, how it works. You have to have PhD in Shopify basically to know how to interfere with it. And it's the best basically if you have a special deal and they kind of listen to your custom needs once you have some unique challenges. But when you discover Shopify is limiting you and you cannot really model your custom business changes in their technology, you need to migrate. And then you migrate usually to something open source, because this is the moment in your e-commerce maturity when you realize, okay, with software as a service, I cannot really grow anymore. And here comes solutions like Magento or Sylius. The problem with Sylius is that it is relatively unknown. So the low brand awareness is making all the sales people having problems selling Sylius, because people like you, e-commerce managers, CTOs, product owners, or even the founders of e-commerce businesses, they don't really trust solutions that they don't know. So also my role here is to educate you and to make you informed and make you trust the solution, because it really has big brands like Raiffeisen, for example, in Germany, or Intersport, or Group Carrefour, or I don't know, ICOS. There are many, many popular brands that are using Sylius locally or globally. It really depends on their implementation. Being unknown is one problem. The other is that you have to know the Symfony framework. So the specific framework that is popular in Europe. Laravel is popular in US, Symfony in Europe. Both are using PHP language. It might sound old, one of the oldest languages in the internet, but also most of the internet is still using PHP, and it kind of provides the most solid e-commerce platforms, because PrestaShop, WooCommerce, Magento, Sylius, Shopware, and many others, but five of them are using PHP. So the learning curve could be high if you don't know anything about coding, but once you know PHP and Symfony, it's very easy because it obeys the standard of the framework. With Magento, you got to have a PhD. You got to know the system in and out. You got to know how to go around all the vulnerabilities, understand how to fix it. It's a really big system, and that's why the developers that know Magento are usually much more expensive than other e-commerce developers. The security problems that I mentioned are also significant because nobody wants to use an unstable solution. So to sum up, with Magento you have a lot of problems with security and instability of the system, also with declining user base. With Shopify you are absolutely vendor locked. So you have to use everything that Shopify provides, and if you want to have something custom, it's really hard to achieve. With Sylius, it is unknown, the brand awareness is low, and it's hard to sell, but once it's sold, it's much easier to customize than Magento. So all platforms have their problems. Sylius is not known and immature, it's lacking plugins, lacking themes, lacking many accelerators and other things that other platforms have. But on the other hand, it's very flexible, very well written in terms of code, tested, scalable, customizable, and is a pleasure to work with. And the seventh final point is my recommendations. Remember, never use Sylius for standard e-commerce. The more custom needs, the better for Sylius. I said it and I'm repeating it again. So all the strange B2B needs you have in the agriculture, in the automotive, where you have millions of pricing variants and products, special integrations you need to create, special marketplace middlewares for calculating split payments with your sellers. There are plenty of custom needs that you can really easily model in Sylius. You've got to have very custom challenges. You've got to treat technology as a core of your business. And you got to have at least some Symfony experts for hire to develop what you need. For Shopify Plus, on the contrary, if your priority is rapid scaling, if you need omni-channel and minimal infrastructure burden, so you just don't care about hosting, you don't care about development, you just go with everything that is shipped in the subscription fee, probably there is nothing better in the world. You should go for Shopify, especially when you scale fast from the basic plan up to the plus and you become an enterprise. And then when you become a big enterprise or a big mid-market player and you have some custom challenges, maybe then you need to migrate from software as a service like Shopify. And finally, Magento. If your business requires very advanced B2B or B2C features out of the box in open source, so you don't really want to pay a subscription every month, there is nothing better than Magento. The feature stack is the biggest, and also there is plenty of developers all over the world. Knowing the solution for 17 years, you have to have a big budget for maintenance and security because you can be badly surprised with Magento security. And that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. It was interesting to summarize all this. I hope it's for the good of Sylius, and if you have any questions regarding any of these solutions, I am not only selling Sylius, I'd like to advise every and each of you because I love to solve problems. So stay with us. If you like this series, subscribe and comment. Maybe I'm missing something, maybe I should tell you about something else that you are very interested in. See you in another episode. Bye.